That's one of the, and what again? Scalability.
Underserved to the distance, so it will be fast and low cost.
It's fast, secured, scalable, and what else again? Bridging the gap. All right. So sometimes I go to the market, and I transfer money to a trader selling palm oil. Okay, you're from Usuka, right? Okay, you school. Why are you in your village? Why are you in your hometown? Okay, well, you school in Usuka, UNN, right? Okay, can you give me the mic? Okay. Assuming you're a market trader now, you sell palm oil. I come to you, and I transfer naira to you, fiat to you, and UBA is having like a, what do they call it?
Maintenance.
Crazy stuff. Maintenance. Sometimes they call it maintenance, rehabilitation. I don't know what it was. I'm sorry about that. They have like a maintenance. So no, give me. You should be with the mic. So I come to you. I transfer money from my OPay account to you. You're a UBA customer. UBA is like a bank in Nigeria. OPay is also a bank, a financial system in Nigeria. I transfer money from my OPay account to your UBA account, and you have already packaged the oil for me. And when I send the money and you have not confirmed the alert, you go allow me go?
No.
Why now?
I never receive alert.
You never receive alert. Are we seeing one of the problems here? And with Sui, how can we bridge this gap with Sui network? How can we bridge this gap with Sui network? Perfect. I have someone here. Let's go. I have 2 more minutes.
Sui is fast.
Okay, it's fast, right? So as you're sending the money, have you ever interacted with Sui before?
You guys today. Can I have the laptop up here? It's not going to go into too much depth, just 20 minutes or so. There's lots of amazing features on Sui. We could talk for hours and hours. It's just going to be a brief overview. So it'd be interesting to know how many people here have actually built on Sui already before today. So kind of like half the room. How many people have built on Web3? So, anything on Ethereum or Bitcoin, anything like that. Around half the room again. Okay, interesting. So, how many people are non-technical in this audience, like graphic designers, things like that? A few as well. Okay, so I'll try and keep this like relatively high level. Okay. Need to just change my screen mode. Sorry, this is going to be a bit difficult for me to turn this way. Should be okay. I'm just going to go to the display. Okay, that's going to be a bit easier. Okay. Okay, so, this is my name. I don't normally go by William George Riches, as Thompson said there. I'm not sure why he's doxing my full name. I thought you were going to give my passport number out there for a second, but yeah, you can just call me Will. That's my name. So I work at Sui Foundation. Our mission is to kind of educate people on Sui, help get them building on Sui, help them have successful projects, successful companies, and to make a difference with Sui. At the end of the day, Sui is just a technology, right? So by itself, just by building on Sui, you're not solving any issues, right? You can use it for bad things, you can use it for good things. It's no different as building on like AWS or Google Cloud. So ultimately, like the ideas have to come from you guys, right? You have the ideas on how you can make a difference, whether that's something just very small and local that makes a small difference in your community, or something more global like a DeFi protocol or something like that. Ultimately, it's down to you guys to come up with the ideas and to implement them. So very brief overview. I'm sure most of you, at least half of you have built on Web3 before. You're very familiar. As I said, I'm a lot older than most of you here, so I started on Bitcoin very early on. Bitcoin was really just a way to solve payments early on. Decentralized, trustless, say, no, you're not allowed to make a payment to this person. Nobody can stop it. It's an unstoppable network, right? But that first generation was only designed around money. Obviously, it had some kind of like negative influences around like power consumption and things like that as well. Ethereum came in to kind of make Bitcoin smarter, essentially, to have assets that you can actually control in some way, so you can customize the asset. So rather than just being money, you can have more like interesting objects that you do things with. And then there's a next generation of blockchains emerging, at which Sui is the forefront, which is having programmable digital assets. So rather than kind of programming things up front and having a smart contract that controls everything, you have individual assets that you can give smart functionality to. So why did we actually build Sui? With obviously there's Ethereum, but then there were like layer 2s coming out, like Polygon and things like that as well. So why did we need another layer 1? Essentially because blockchain hadn't actually fulfilled its promise, right? There was no actual real-world implementation that's kind of making a difference beyond kind of payments across borders and things like that. If you look at Ethereum, there's not really any particularly successful like consumer applications, and that's because of a lot of issues with scalability, high fees, things like that. So this is what Sui was designed to solve. So, like, for those of you who said you built on Ethereum, it's not a great experience generally. Like as a developer, most people kind of build on Ethereum because most of the tooling is there. Most of the edge is not going to understand how to install MetaMask and things like that. The second problem is not enough real assets. So if there aren't enough interesting things already on the blockchain, then people aren't going to be interested. Again, if you go and speak to some regular person and you show them like a DeFi thing, they're not interested, right? They want real things kind of on chain to actually interact with. And then the third thing I touched on was developer experience is just not great on layer 2s. And the contract security is obviously a huge issue as well. If you look at the biggest hacks ever on Web3, right, there's literally 100 of them that are just like $10 million, $100 million, billions of dollars at the top of the list. So these are huge, huge hacks. We've never had a hack literally at all on Sui, so no money has ever been lost to hackers, and that's in nearly 2 years. So that tells you how much more secure the Move programming language is. So I mentioned briefly user acquisition. So just like to give you some numbers there, like there's less than 60 million wallet installs across all of crypto. So that includes things like MetaMask, Phantom, Nightly. So that includes browser extensions, mobile wallets. There's less than 60 million. So if you're building some global application, that's the maximum number of users you can reach is 60 million. Sui has solved this with something called ZK login. I don't know if you can see this down here. But it's a way to log in to a crypto account with just a social account, like Google or Facebook or something like that. So then suddenly your addressable market, TAM, goes from 60 million to 5 billion users, which is obviously a huge, huge difference. And down here, you probably can't see as well, sponsored transactions. That enables you to pay gas on behalf of your users. So if you combine these two things together, suddenly you can go to an application on Sui, you can sign in with a Google account or a Facebook account, and you can just start using the application straight away without having to buy Sui, pay for gas, or anything like that. So anyone know what these are? Seed phrase. So again, going back to 70-year-old lady or man, anyone who doesn't really understand Web3, you know, this is not a good experience for them, right? To create a wallet and having to save these words somewhere, keep these secure. You lose it one day and you lose all of your assets, right? It's not a great experience. If you compare that to this and being able to just sign in with any kind of account, it's a much cleaner experience. You can make this pretty secure as well, right? If you secure your Google account with like two-factor authentication, you can increase the security there. If you ever lose access to your Google account, you can recover it through the normal methods. So you can contact Google, for example, and they can help you recover your account. But because it uses zero-knowledge proofs as well, Google don't actually have access to your account in any way. Yeah, so this is an example here of what this unlocks, right? It unlocks being able to log into crypto applications on multiple devices. So on phones, it's a lot easier, even on things like TV. So like if you're logging into a game, it's quite easy to log in with a Google account. It comes up with a code, right? And then you scan it on your phone and you log in. So you can do the exact same method with ZK login. So things like games and things like that become a lot more accessible on Sui. The second barrier was not enough real assets. So this is a kind of interesting equation. Utility of smart contract platform is equal to the number of useful assets times by the amount of programmability. So to make a smart contract application useful, it's basically saying, first of all, you have to have a lot of interesting assets on chain, and then you have to have a lot of programmability within the language to enable you to do stuff with those things. So if you think of things like DeFi protocols, things like that, all these assets exist on chain, and most other applications can then build things on top of those assets. So this is what's amazing about Web3. This is the permissionless aspect. You're not starting from scratch with your applications you're building here today, right? If you want to, you can build something on top of other applications. You can build something on top of another DeFi protocol that already exists, that has hundreds of millions of dollars locked up in it. You can build a product on top of that, enable your users to access that liquidity, and build some other features on top. So in Web3, you're not always starting from scratch. And the amount of programmability, that's really the complexity of things that you can do on top of those assets. So Move gets you a lot of rich features that you can use to build on top. Things like randomness built in, like on chain, for example, you can use, and then you can build stuff on top of that. And then the third barrier, as I mentioned, developer experience on most other ecosystems is not great. So Move was designed to solve that. It's built from the ground up to be secure, as mentioned. And you have this object model in Sui, and everything in Move is based around that object model. So if you program in Solidity, for example, there's no relation between the language and the data model. In Sui, everything is kind of like combined together. So when you're programming in Move, it tightly relates to the model on chain. So to give you an example of how that makes things a lot easier, the object model for developers. I think somebody mentioned, right, one of the strengths was the object model on Sui, which I think is definitely true. So like, if you're using Ethereum or any EVM chain, Polygon, Arbitrum, anything like that, this is the kind of general approach. You have this account model where every time you want to do something, you have to contact this smart contract. So if you imagine there's two accounts here, Alice and Bob, and they want to transact between each other. So Alice, her account here, I don't know if you can see the writing, it's quite small, but Alice wants to purchase some tokens. So her wallet will actually interact with this smart contract. It will submit this function here for purchase number of tokens, 1. And then you can see then in the smart contract there, the balance updates to 1. And then she wants to actually transfer this token that she's just bought to Bob. So again, she calls the transfer function on the smart contract. And then the balances it will call the transfer function here, which will send 1 token to Bob. So then it updates the balance in the smart contract. So that Alice's account now goes to 0 tokens, and Bob's account goes to 1 token. So yeah, Alice and Bob don't really own anything here, right? Every time that they actually want to do something with the tokens that they've purchased, they have to submit a function call to the smart contract, which then will update these balances within the smart contract. So Bob's account, Bob's private key can be, without being compromised, you can see here the balance, I don't know if you can see this, is going down from 1 to 0. So this can happen when the actual smart contract is hacked. So even if you keep your private key secure, your seed phrase that we just talked about a minute ago, and you stop hackers from accessing that, essentially they can still hack the smart contract itself. And most smart contracts are updated by some developer private key as well. Most developers will hold a private key. They might have a multi-sig of multiple keys, but somewhere there's been a private key held which enables you to call admin functions on the smart contract. So if that gets hacked, then suddenly someone can just drain the smart contract, take the tokens out, even though Bob has done nothing wrong in this scenario. So here's kind of like an example here, something that happened a few years ago, only a few $1 million this time, but this is very, very common. So on Sui, this is slightly different. If Alice and Bob want to interact with each other, Alice calls a purchase function in the smart contract. So at this point, this is very similar. This will then, it calls the purchase function, which creates a token of type T. So the token is this is creating an object, and the type of the object is T. And then in the same transaction, this will actually transfer the token. So this is slightly different already, because previously you had to call 2 different functions. You had to call the purchase function and then the transfer function separately. On Sui, you can chain these different things together into a single PTB. Does anyone experienced PTBs so far? A few people? The token type T exists there, and now she wants to transfer it to Bob. So she calls it a transfer function, and it just directly transfers from her account to Bob's account. It's not calling anything in the smart contract at all. So this is what we mean by programmable smart assets. So the asset itself is smart and has functionality. It's not just the smart contract that exists somewhere else. So you can see now the token exists in Bob's account. Okay, so yeah, object model, I mean, I think it makes things a lot more natural for like developers, but what does that actually like mean in reality, right? Ultimately, like the best developers want to build on platforms that are best for the end users, right? It's pretty cool if you're programming something and it's fun to program, but at the end of the day, you still want the actual experience to be good for your users, right? And if it's not good for your users, then you'd build on another platform. So a few people mentioned some of the positives on Sui, and I think a lot of those were around the user experience. So low latency, basically meaning that the kind of settlement time of a transaction is very, very, very low on Sui. High bandwidth as well, so that means you can scale to a very large number of transactions and still keep the low latency. So on some networks, they might have low latency, but as soon as you get lots of transactions, suddenly the latency goes up and up and up. On Sui, that doesn't happen. And you also have low consistent fees as well. So low is important, but again, on other networks, sometimes it's not consistent. Sometimes if there's lots of transactions, the fees will spike to a really high level. On Sui, that's not the case. It remains flat all the time. So I mentioned PTBs very briefly. I'll just go back to the previous screen here. You can see here, we're just on an aggregator here, which is going to do a swap. So an aggregator basically will do swaps on other protocols. So it's a way of combining lots of different protocols together and choosing the best price across these different exchanges automatically. So on here, we're going to swap one Sui, and it's quoting $3.52 in USDC. So on this particular transaction here, again, I don't know if you can see down here, but just for a single swap of just a few dollars, it's finding the best prices over lots of different protocols. And instead of just swapping directly for Sui to USDC, you can see it's actually going through some intermediate tokens. So on one exchange, it's swapping 20% of the Sui for some kind of meme token called Plop. And I'm not familiar with it. I'm not advising any of you go out and buy Plop. It doesn't sound like a great buy to me personally. But so part of it gets exchanged for Plop on an exchange called Cetus, and then that Plop gets exchanged for USDC. So that's then 20%. So that's 0.2 Sui is being exchanged there, and then another segment, another 15% is being swapped for the Sui NS token on the Cetus protocol. And then the last 65% is Sui being swapped for the Sui NS token on a different protocol called DeepBook. So you have three exchanges there with some intermediary tokens, three different types of intermediate tokens on two different exchanges. And that happens all in three transactions that are chained together into a single PTB. So yeah, it gives you best pricing, and it's atomic as well. So by atomic, we mean that either all of these components of the swap will succeed or it will fail. So if one of these exchanges, the price changes or something like that, instead of just swapping and giving you two parts so that you end up with, say, like 2 USDC, that doesn't happen. Either all three parts of this will go through at once, or the whole thing will fail. So, and this is the same transaction here. You can see this, the fee for this is it's a single fee on one PTB, so it's about 1,000th of a Sui, which is about a third of a cent. So it's a very low fee for such a complex transaction. There's a video here. I'm not actually sure what it is. Let's see if I've got internet to play this. Okay, yeah, this will give you an example of like the settlement time doing a swap on Sui compared to Solana. So again, this is just using an aggregator for a basic swap called Hop Aggregator. So this was recorded a while ago because the Sui price was a lot lower there, it looks like. Now this is on Jupyter, another aggregator on Solana. So over 10 seconds there on Solana compared to less than a second on Sui. So ultimately, if you look at figures in terms of number of TPS and things like that, there might not be a huge difference between Solana on Sui, but the real world experience is very, very different. And that's what really counts for your end users, essentially. Just going to show a couple of demos that highlight a few things I've talked about there. So let's go do a real swap on Aftermath so you can see that this isn't something that I've kind of pre-recorded and changed. This is kind of real. So I think I showed previously a router called, an aggregator called Hop. Aftermath is another aggregator, very similar, seems to be having problems loading at the moment. Perhaps it could be the internet. Actually, is the 5G connection a bit slow? Okay, I've got 5G on my phone. Let me try switching to that. Okay, that seems better, right. So let's swap 5 USDC. I'm going to connect the wallet. No, I don't have 5 USDC. Okay, let's swap some Sui. Okay, you can see on here on Aftermath, like I said, it routes between different exchanges, so you can actually choose which different exchanges or other aggregators you want to use. So the aggregators sometimes will aggregate other aggregators. So you can choose whether you want to go through Aftermath or Cetus or FlowX. If you go on Aftermath here, again, it gives you another representation, like on Hop, of what is going to happen with this swap. So 74% of it is going to go here via Sui swap, 25% through Cetus. It looks like it's changed in those few seconds there. Looks like my slippage is too low. Let's just, because we're only swapping one pretty high, so you might want to update it more to like 5%, something like that. Oh, it's still too low. Okay, let's swap a higher amount. And okay, 1.5 seconds. That's pretty slow by Sui standards. Obviously, it can be dependent on internet connections, you know, how quick the RPC server is, things like that. But that's about as slow as you'll see. You'll generally see between about 0.5 second and 1.5 seconds. So okay, we've swapped some Sui for some USDC. Let's go and do something a bit more interesting with that. Let's go to Suilend. Okay, we're having internet connection issues again. Okay. Okay, so we're going to connect our wallet on Suilend. We should have some USDC now. Just trying to find somewhere with more signal. There we go. Okay, so we have some, you can see on the right here, our wallet balances. We have some Sui and some USDC. So let's lend some of our Sui to this platform. So lending protocols are basically just peer-to-peer, decentralized way to be able to lend to the platform and to borrow back from the platform. So if you lend to the platform, it'll pay you some kind of interest for lending it money. And if you borrow from the platform, you generally have to pay some money for borrowing. So this is very similar to going to a bank. If you put money into a savings account at a bank, they'll give you some interest rate, a few percent, maybe a bit higher here, 30% or something like that, whatever it is. No? Okay, so you get 30% inflation, but they don't give you 30% interest. That sounds unfair. Okay. Okay, I wish I hadn't mentioned that. Sorry, guys. Okay. So let's assume in a fair market, they give you 5% interest or something like that. And then generally, when you then borrow from the bank, they'll charge you maybe 6% or 7%, normally a little bit higher than what you would earn on the savings. But with a bank, obviously, you have to go in, you sign paperwork, it's all very slow. This is what's amazing about DeFi is anyone who has a wallet and access to the internet can go on there and they can perform these lends and the borrowers just instantly without any permission from anybody. So we're going to put 50 Sui into here. Okay, I don't know if this is internet issues again. Let's try again. Oh, okay, it's not. I'm actually on testnet on my wallet, actually. That's my fault. Let me just change that. I'm going to go into here, change to mainnet. Okay, you can see here we're depositing 50 Sui. It's obviously slightly higher because it's adding a small gas fee on top as well. And there you go, done. Again, it looks like we're having internet issues, so the RPC stuff is not refreshing very quickly, but it looks like that was completed. You can see down here now it's deposited assets, 50 Sui. You can see already here it's more than 50 Sui. So in these few seconds, you can see the interest piling up in real time here. So it's 50 point, a few zeros and 309. Oh, sorry, I'm completely blocking it as I'm talking about it. You can see the deposited assets are just to the right here. So you can see it's 50.0004 something. So you can see the interest going up literally in real time. So you could withdraw that immediately now and have that like very small profit minus the gas fee. So now that we've got 50 Sui deposited on that, you can actually borrow against that. So we can decide, right, okay, we want to take something like Sui ETH, which is just like the Sui wrapped version of Ethereum. And because you can see a breakdown here of how much you can borrow. So we've deposited 50 Sui, which is worth about $169. So they're letting us borrow up to $118 back of that. So you can't borrow the full amount, but you can borrow kind of like 2/3 roughly of what you've lent to allow for some fluctuation in token price. So we can borrow any of these assets here. So we can say, okay, how much? It's not going to be a lot, right? ETH is worth quite a lot. So let's say 0.01 ETH. I'm going to borrow that there. Again, the RPC things are too unreliable on this internet, but we can see here straight away, we've got the 0.01 wrapped ETH in our wallet straight away. If you go to like an Explorer or something like that, again, let's connect our wallet. Go to here, which will give you an overview of your account. You can see immediately here gives you a nice kind of overview, right? On the Sui-lend protocol, we've supplied 50 Sui, we've borrowed 0.01 back. And these are the actual assets in our wallet. So we have the 0.01 Sui, 0.01 ETH there, and there's about 38 Sui still there as well. So now we can do something with that wrapped ETH as well, because we've lent Sui to the platform, we've borrowed Ethereum back, so we have that Ethereum in our wallet to do whatever we want. At some point, we have to repay that Ethereum to settle that balance with the lending protocol. So eventually, you need to pay 0.01 ETH back, plus some small amount of interest. So eventually, we still need that ETH, but we have it in our wallet. So this shows you the kind of control again. You don't have to ping a smart contract. We own that asset in our wallet. We can do anything we want with that. So we can go back to something like Aftermath. We can choose the Sui-ETH here. Let's refresh. So we have the 0.01 ETH there. We can swap it for anything we like. We can choose like a meme token, like FUD. I mean, I would not advise on a personal level that you borrow from a platform and swap it all for a meme token. It's probably not a good idea, but let's just do it anyway. So now you can go back. Let's have a look on the Explorer again. You can see here you now have the FUD in your wallet. We still owe the 0.01 to Sui-land. So at some point we have to pay that back. If you don't pay that back, you're going to lose all of your collateral, the 50 Sui. So you can see how instant that is, right? There's no permission required. You can do these complex operations. I can do something with the FUD now if I want as well. I could go on to, I think even Sui-land as well supports FUD. So you could go on to, under meme coins here, I can now actually lend that FUD that I've swapped for on Sui-land. Yeah, do you have a question? Sorry? The duration to pay back is any point in time. So the interest is just accumulating. You should be able to see. When you repay the loan? Any time you like. The interest is just increasing all the time. So you can see here the Sui-ETH, that's incrementing at 0.01003 something now. So if you want to repay that, there's a small amount of interest. So this will go on forever. If you don't repay it, you just lose the collateral that you put down originally. Okay, yeah, so you could loop this, right? You could keep going. The FUD there, you could then go and lend that on another platform, or you can do something interesting with the FUD. Okay, how much time have we got? Have we got time? Yeah, okay. Show another couple of demos. Let's go for, we've got time, Thompson? No? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I hope that kind of shows some of the interesting things you can do, right, with objects. So I think when you're thinking about like hackathon projects, try and think about the object model a lot, what you can do with assets, how you can give control to your users, so they have ultimate control over their applications in a way where they actually own their assets, and try and think of that from a UX perspective as well, how you build that into the interface. Any questions, be upstairs, like in terms of different tooling you want to use. As soon as you have your project idea, it's a good idea to come up and just talk it through, and we can talk about like if it makes sense or if there's like any better tooling you can use, for example. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, that either means that I did an amazing job explaining everything, or I didn't make any sense at all. So hopefully you understood. Okay, thanks very much. Good luck with your projects, guys.
Are we just clapping? So how many Sui are we giving, Will? Are we ready? So I want us to be fast about it. Sui. Are you ready? You have a question? Oh, please can you 30 seconds, just 30 seconds for a question. Please, do we have a mic to go back? A mic to quickly go back? A mic to quickly go back? All right, Will, this is for you. Question?
So good morning. So I wanted to ask on the Sui-land, the assets, I wasn't really clear about the assets for the user.
The assets that I was lending, or yes. So you couldn't see which ones which assets were there.
When I lend,
yeah,
the collateral I drop, how?
Oh, okay. So the collateral I put in was Sui. So I put 50 Sui in as the collateral. So ultimately, you don't actually have to repay that. So you're basically sending the control of that 50 Sui over to the smart contract essentially, and that's locked up until you pay back that collateral. So the interest on the collateral is increasing all the time, and the asset you're borrowing back, obviously that has its own token price as well. So the difficulty with lending and borrowing, right, is both you've got two different tokens that have different token prices. So if you actually borrow like close to your limit, for example, and that token that you borrowed goes down in price, you can actually like get into a bit of trouble because suddenly the amount that you need to repay is actually more than what you'd lent originally. So you have to be kind of careful with like how the interest rate builds up over time. So yeah, it's not something where you want to deposit and just forget about it for like 10 years, but there's no fixed period where you have to repay that collateral. The interest just will keep increasing until you choose to repay it. Does that make sense? Yep.
I'm sorry we don't have any more time to take more questions. There's going to be an office hours open upstairs for any clarification you need, any technical issues. This is special office, so you probably take your ticket there. You go up there to meet Will and Femi, who will be up there. So are we ready to give our 10 Sui? Are you ready? Yes. I'm not sure you're ready. Are you ready? Yes. Are you ready? Yes. It's all right. How many Sui are we giving him again? 10. All right. I want to feel the energy, right? Are we agreeing to that? So I want to feel your energy. I want to see how vibrant you guys are. Let's go with the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go! Perfect. So how was the session? Did you enjoyed it, right? All right. So remember I said something. We came power packed. We actually sourced for the best around to come here to give you guys talks, keynotes that will enlighten you guys more about the focus for this Hackfest. Remember, the focus of this Hackfest is on financial what? Financial inclusion, right? All right. So also privileged right here to bring one of the best in town to give us a keynote. I'm going to bring in on Tommy Eromosele. Yeah. No. Before I introduce her, I want you to give her 5 strong, solid Sui. Are you good? 1, 2, ready, go. I don't think she will accept that. Okay, now we're giving her 5 boza. Are we ready? 1, 2, 3, ready, go. All right, so Tommy is the general manager for EFINA. EFINA is one of the top establishment out there driving financial inclusion. I'm sure when she come up, she's going to give you talk more about herself and what her establishment is doing. So before I give her the mic, I need 3 Sui, please. 3 strong Sui. Are you ready? Yeah. Let's go.
Thank you. Good morning. We're all Sui. Good, Sui. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. And my colleagues will be here soon, but it's great to be here. And Ashley, you're doing a great job. Thank you. Please let me appreciate Ashley. Great job. Yeah. She's an apostle of financial inclusion, spreading the word, and you're raising like young champions, next generation. So thank you, everyone. So I'm not sure why you call this keynote, Ashley, really. But it's great to really be building bridges to financial inclusion and getting us involved in that conversation. And I think I want to start us off. So I'm not sure if this is day 1 or day 2. Day 1. Okay, so conversations around financial inclusion. So what I'll do is, I hope this works. I want to try and play about 5 minutes documentary, right, on financial inclusion. And then when we're done with that, we can have an initial first conversations about why is this important, right? So maybe show of hands in the room. Who has an account? Financial account or a wallet? Good, everyone here. This is Lagos, Nigeria. So imagine what if I had asked this question in Maiduguri or in Yobe State, we'll probably have a different scenario, right? How many of us here, yes, we have an account. How many of us here have access to credit? You can go into the bank and get credit. Okay, hands are fewer, right? Insurance, we have phones, insurance for your phones, for your laptop, right? So we're just getting ourselves to think about what this is about. So let me see if this works. I'll do that. Okay. Starting, so we'll just try to listen as much as we can, right? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start. Shoma, please help me walk. Great, good, Sui. We're starting. Thank you, people. Sorry about that. So we're looking at financial inclusion. Quick concept around financial inclusion. We'll talk about whether you have access to financial services, right? We're looking at a state where individuals or businesses can access and use. So we're talking about 4 dimensions of financial inclusion. So first is access. So for example, I can access a mobile phone, right? The next level is, can I use the mobile phone, right? Then the third level, we're talking about what's the quality of my usage? How well can I use the mobile phone? And lastly, we're talking about impact. Can I use it in a way that is impactful and beneficial to me? So we all say there is financial inclusion is a buzzword, but at the end of the day, then we have some arguments around, is financial inclusion beyond an account, right? And so that's narration gives us the answer to that question around yes. When we talk about financial inclusion, we're talking about, it's beyond having access to an account. We're interested in how well you can use finance. And when we say finance, we're talking about a range of financial services, beginning with what we call an account or a wallet, so a transactional account, something that allows you to receive money, send money, so payments channels, which we, in Nigeria, we are, well advanced in. But then beyond that, we say you should be able to get credit, save, both short-term and long-term savings. You should be able to yesterday about how in other countries, young people your age coming out of school have access to credit. Out of school, you had access in Nigeria. I'm talking about Nigeria. You had access to loan to get you a car because you already had a job waiting for you and you had to commute to that job. So there was already a financial system that helped you to do that. And that's where we want to get to, a financial system that is empowering for individuals. So basically, we're talking about, access usage of affordable quality solutions. And we're asking that in all, right? So, right, in rural digital payments, she's doing a business, she needs to pay someone or receive money from someone in Lagos State. She can do that. And maybe your solution can facilitate that for her. That's the kind of solution. Good access service, thinking about there's something that happens on the, for insurance, we know what that is, right? So we're talking about ensure that if something happens, do I lose my phone? Something happens, do I lose my phone? Do I have coverage for my phone of opportunity? Do I have coverage for my phone of opportunities and impact? You will try to use data, right? Quality of inclusion, do they have financially excluded? So in other words, they don't have access to quality of inclusion, do they have financially excluded? So in other words, they don't have access to whether it's a bank or other formal institutions like mobile money or even the informal adjors. They don't have access to that, right? So they're completely excluded. So again, when you're designing your solutions, you're thinking about the fact that some people are in and we want to enhance the level of their offerings and the impact that it has on them. Some people are completely outside of the financial system. So thinking about how you design for them also matters. So in terms of just looking at Nigeria, the Nigerian landscape, we've, in the last 15 years, we've doubled the number of Nigerians, or the percentage of Nigerians who are formally included. And in that way, we talk about those who have banks, bank accounts, mobile money, and basically access to an institution that is regulated either by the CBN, PENCOM, NICOM. I mean, we know our regulators, SEC, right? We've doubled that, but what is actually driving that is payments. The usage levels or access levels is relatively very low, right? So again, maybe I'm advocating for financial inclusion and increase. I will want to encourage you to think in that dimension, right? A lot of people have access. Yes, think about solutions that can also extend access non-bank areas or non-payment areas, where you already have people who have an account, but then how do you deepen the value that they get from being financially included? For example, young people like yourselves, I'm sure that if you have access to credit, insurance, you can save towards your, that we have, we do have about 40 million MSMEs, right? That accounts for nearly 90% of the MSMEs on the continent. So it means that the market that is available to your solutions, if you just pick maybe the MSMEs in the space and you say, I want to get a solution that can enhance financial benefits for MSMEs, you have a huge market to play with, right? And that's, can also help you serve the continent as well if we focus on that. So just encouraging that we do that as much as we can. Another opportunity is, like I mentioned earlier on, some of us, is there anyone here who has, plays in the informal space? So maybe you save with a group of cooperatives, your jaw, a couple of friends come together and you put money together. Anyone? Yeah, just a few people. Young people do that, but our mothers, people in our community, a lot of people do that, right? So there is a huge market for that as well. In 2023, we saw that nearly 40% of our Nigerians' adult population are saving or, involved in this space. Some of the opportunities that we've seen here is how do we digitize that? And how do we, not necessarily formalize that, but for young people like yourselves, how can you come and enhance the offerings? For example, some of them are saving in, maybe in their, in their teens, right? Or maybe they're just passing money around from one person to the other. How do you link them up? Have a solution that documents, creates a trail of what they currently have, right? Link them to a formal institution, and then extends the range of services that they have access to. Because there is now documentation that shows that, Mommy Latifa has consistently, saved maybe 500,000 in the last 6 months. She has borrowed 1 million naira. She has paid, right? So there is a credit record that shows that she's a good credit, borrower. And that information, if we can give it on, find a way to link it with a formal provider like a bank or a money point, they can find that useful to then be able to provide more services to Mommy Latifa. So things like that we look into. We've talked about this earlier on. I'll just go. The second thing I want to touch on, beyond financial inclusion and the different levels of usage, is the disparity that we see across different demographics. So if you look at, I'm sure you can see the screen. If you look at the gender dynamics, you see that there's like an 11% gap between men and women if we look at formal inclusion, right? So I think we have about 70% of men who are saving, who are formally included, and about 59% of women who are formally included. So it tells you that there is more that we need to do to ensure, a society that includes women. When you look at rural-urban, there's about a 30% formal exclusion gap. So people in rural areas, we always want to encourage people to say, Lagos is not Nigeria. So young people, when we're building our solutions, we have a large market in Lagos, I know that, right? But we're also encouraging, and maybe when you're doing your solution, it's good to start with the Lagos market again. You're thinking about how can you scale, or how can you get something that is marketable, that is viable, that can meet the needs, right? But as you go along, designing for an inclusive system requires that we think about all of Nigeria, right? Women, rural Nigeria, the rich and the poor, we have about 40% gap, right? Where we have 71% of the top 60% richest households in Nigeria have a bank account, and only 27% of the poorest have a bank account. And if we also talk about one of the reasons why people are not, or do not have a bank account, or are not formally included, income becomes an issue. And so the thing that should be at the back of your mind is that if we want an inclusive solution, we also need to think about affordability, right? So how do we ensure that the solutions that we have are affordable to the rural community, to the poor, and that it's available to everyone? Other things to think about are educational levels, right? When we look at data, we basically see that people with low education are the least likely to be formally included. So again, not everybody has a smartphone. How do you ensure that your solutions can be designed in a way that people who are not digitally literate, do not have access to the web and things like that, can use your solutions? And then age as well. Think about solutions for the elderly, solutions that will appeal to the youth as you go about that. We've touched about this slightly, but what we want to highlight here is just the disparity between the South and the North, right? We're being biased here because we're trying to advocate for financial inclusion and encouraging you to think in serving the South, but we're also trying to open serving the South, but we're also trying to open your eyes to the real, exclusion levels in the North. This is something as we go ahead. So we've talked about the groups I talked about earlier on, trying to design for different groups, just to highlight smallholder farmers as well. Understanding not just their levels of inclusion, but also their needs and their preferences. What are their income patterns, and how can we design solutions that will be tailored to that? So some of the gaps in the market, spoken to this, we have high so limited credit access, lack of tailored products and solutions. For example, microinsurance for digital was on one of the inclusion, extend formal inclusion, is the agents, right? And we know that having agents, financial service agents in Nigeria, which I think we all use today, right, came from innovation and us thinking about that, the fact that in 2008, what we saw earlier on, just about 23% of adult Nigerians were banked. And in 2018, we were still around just 50%. And we said, how do we extend access? And we leverage agents to do that. So similarly, we are asking for innovative solutions from you that will help us extend access, the reach to people. Today, almost everybody has a mobile phone. I think our data shows over 80% of adults have a mobile phone, right? So how can you leverage those channels, for example, to extend services to Nigerians, bearing in mind their financial literacy? I think even if we say 80% have mobile phones, I think over 60% of that is basic phones, right? So bearing all of that data points in mind, a lot of data points, but just bearing a lot of that in mind will help you to think about what you're designing for.
Nigeria faces significant
to some extent around human-centric design, right? Thinking about who you're designing for. Designing for a mother who has young children is different from designing for a working class mother, right? Or designing for a young Nigerian who is out of school is different from designing for a 40-year-old adult who is at the point where they're thinking about retirement. So you're thinking about your solutions, you're thinking about who am I designing for and what are their needs, thinking about them as a human and using, putting them at the center of the solution that you're creating. We've already talked about affordability.
Significant challenges in meeting this.
Cultural relevance as well. Again, if I go back to, you will be shocked, in some places in the North, we have data points to show that where some women say, when we ask them, why don't you have an account? They say, my spouse will not allow it. So if you're designing a solution, you're taking it to the North, and you say, I want to serve women in the North, and you're maybe putting it on it's something that needs them to use, an Android phone or the internet, then we then would have to question how well you understand the segment that you are designing for, right? So cultural relevance also matters. In our last survey, sorry, please let me know how many minutes I have. Okay, in our last survey, we noticed that in the Southeast, for example, there was a gradual shift towards informal groups. So people who were banked were leaving, were no longer actively using their bank accounts and moving more towards using their village association groups. And so understanding some of those cultural differences. So we all know that in the Southeast, there was the whole IPOP situation going on there. And so that might be encouraging that. So every time you're designing, understanding the context and designing for that will be useful. I want to talk about trusts particularly because we're young people in Nigeria. We know that today there's quick access to credit, there are a lot of digital platforms, but a lot of things are happening on there where people are, I can go and take 20 loans from different apps, right? And I go to church and testify at some point and say, thank God I was owing. But that's what's happening today. So we're asking that when you're building a solution, you think about the fact that some people will try to take advantage of that solution that you're creating. And so how are you creating measures to ensure that there's consumer protection and people don't exploit that, right? You're thinking about both the banks who can use it, how you can link them, but then you're also thinking about the woman who might not really understand this, but will get on it. How do I ensure that there's information that helps her as she goes along, right? To maybe there are checks you want to pay. Are you sure? There's information at different points in time to help her, prevent her from falling, into any risk of fraud, right? So that's that. So lastly, I'll give us two examples. So we did a survey in Kaduna State, right? So this survey I've been talking about, we've done a deep dive in Kaduna State, and we're looking at women in Kaduna. And I want to show us an example of how we've tried to use human-centered design to ensure that everything we're doing about a solution or a program is specific to that group. So for example, I think we had about 6, looking at women in Kaduna State, low-income women. We divided them into 6 groups. And one of that group is the confident optimists, so, right? And this is just about 8% of women in Kaduna. They're confident optimists, and they are likely to be formally excluded, right? They're mostly low-income earners. They largely have below secondary school education. They are likely not to have trust in formal financial service providers, right? With that information, we also know that what drives them, right, what's their motivation, right, is that they are likely to be influenced by the male figures in their lives, right? They want to make a decision. For women like this, they're likely to go to their husbands and say, I want to open an account. Can I open an account? I want to start a business. Can I start a business? So that gives us a sense of how we should be interacting with her. The second thing is that her social interactions are limited to her family, right? It then tells us how we can reach her or influence her. She belongs to many groups, right? She would like to just have enough money to support her family and her needs. It tells us about her aspirations. What's she interested in? What's she looking for, right? So if this is the woman we're designing for, what kind of products should we be looking at? So first thing we've said is enable savings towards goals, right? She's a woman who has in her mind, she wants to save towards maybe her children's education, her family. So when you're designing for this kind of woman, you think about saving solutions. You think about the messaging. How do you contact her? Through other groups or through her spouse, right? You know that she doesn't have a lot of access to outside information. You know that maybe she doesn't have insurance, she's formally excluded. So you build your solutions around that, okay? One thing I want to emphasize before we share the video, because that helps us bring it to life. On the video, what you see is, one of them, you see a medical doctor in Lagos, Nigeria, who has been financially included since he was in university, right? But even right now, he doesn't understand some of the things around the services that he uses. For example, a bank card, he doesn't still understand. So that also shows us that we have interconnected problems, right? So we don't just have financial exclusion problem or a financial inclusion problem. We have an inclusion problem. People are excluded from good healthcare. They're excluded from economic opportunities. They're excluded from good education, right? So if you're thinking about financial inclusion, please think about financial inclusion within all of those challenges, structural issues, because finance is not a means in itself, it's a means to an end. And that end is economic inclusion, ensuring that people can have can get the life that they want to have, right? So whether it's the fact that they want to achieve, have a good education or have good health care, or they want to start a business, build financial solutions. This will help us to kind of make sense of all of it.
Nigeria faces significant.
I born the way I go, I stop at just 3. Within I like to, I even try to do and so small.
Kowa da kuɗin komai da komai in gari da na ƙauye sai a ɗauki.
Nigeria faces significant.
Mu uku ne a gurin mijina.
Don't give me so. Now the money where they use and they manage. I see they carry that small money, they follow for a week like this. Even if I get 5 naira, I carry 15 naira, I go give my mother. So making use and they help.
Sai kuma game da makaranta na iyakacin secondary. Haka ne. Ina sana'a. Ta ƴan su kayan miya su magi su gishiri su kuka su kubewa duka abubuwan da nake siyarwa kenan.
I've been a medical doctor for quite some years. So, and I work in Lagos State. As you can see, this is my precious wife. So, and I have 3 kids. So, 2 boys and a girl. So, I'm paying school fees. Even my landlord is, I don't know, the stress of, you see, I know what I pay, even despite this is not befitting enough. So but still we give glory to God.
I joined a little getting that money. We would donate that money and give to somebody because we would donate that money and give to that very person. When my own turn reach, I don't even have my own money, that maybe the one that I'm already donating, I will collect it there and do whatever things I want to do. From that very place again, I don't know.
Kamar game da komai da komai idan har na riga na siyo na kayan miya, ribar da na samu idan na saro ina wawware kuɗin komai da komai in gari da mata kamar mu da muke zaune a ƙauye sai a ɗauki ɗa namiji a kai shi makaranta a bar ƴa mace. To abin da iyayen ita ƴa macen suke dubawa iyakacewa shi yayi ƙasa ko kuma ko wani sha'anin zai zo mishi ko shi yayi ƙasa ko kuma ko wani sha'anin zai zo mishi ko kuma rashin lafiya ko kuma haka tunda mijin kuma rashin lafiya ko kuma haka tunda mijinka ba a zaune yake ba shi yasa muka haɗa kanmu muka fitar da ƙungiya. Domin ba a zaune yake ba shi yasa muka haɗa kanmu muka fitar da ƙungiya domin tallafawa kowa ne
I was in school because I lived at school. Because I lived at school. So
Come on, reach them. Yeah, one problem. Reach them. Yeah, one problem.
da maka tunda baka da shi to idan ka je idan suka buɗe wadda muka koma awa aka ce ba shi to idan ka je idan suka buɗe wadda muka koma awa aka ce ba an ce mu tafi ba idan har muka da
No, you guys have I'm knocking out any Sui now. You guys have missed it out. No, you guys have I'm knocking out any Sui now. You guys have missed it out. So can we just say thank you to Tommy? And thank you very much. We just say thank you to Tommy. And thank you very much. They probably quickly. 30 seconds. Ask a question within 30 seconds, please. Within 30 seconds. All right.
Good morning. It's just simple. In the terms of financial inclusion, do we also consider people who don't want to be included in?
Thank you very much. Sorry.
We access them and are they accessible to us? Thank you.
Inside data. It's good to find other data to triangulate the inside data. It's good to find other data to triangulate. The more you triangulate, the better you can pinpoint the customer, right? That's something I would say.
We're interested in solutions for women
demand and supply side to give you a stronger argument. Those who do not want to participate or be part of the financial ecosystem. So let me say there are two ways. There is no way that anyone will be outside of the financial system, maybe outside of the formal financial system. So in other words, you don't want to use bank. You don't want to use somebody who's regulated by the, so there are financial transactions going on. So I agree with you. We're not going to compel people to be part of the formal financial institution, but then we're saying those institutions, right? So like to enhance what they're currently doing to make sure that it maximizes the impact, or we optimize the impact to them, right? The benefit to them. Then there are those who to participate in the economy, helps them to build resilience. So if anything goes wrong, they can manage the shock, and then helps them to take advantage of opportunities. I don't think anybody would not want any of those three things. If there are people that are in that box, which we know that they are, there are reasons why they are in that box. Barriers, right, that makes them to be excluded. And in terms of those who are not digital savvy, I think that was your question, around people who, again, that's why, so there are two things. You can have a solution that talks about how do we enhance digital literacy, a solution that's designed for that. Sorry, we can have a solution that is designed for enhancing digital literacy, right, and helping people to, understand how to use technology, financial technology, and things like that. You could also have a solution that you want to embed in other digital solutions that will increase, the user experience and the consumer protection for people who are already using. So that is a challenge in this market. That's a solution. We need a solution to address. I think that's how I would say it.
Okay. So sorry, because I believe what is happening here is Nigerians are building for Nigeria. So that's one thing I want to encourage you, that hopefully the next unicorn comes out of this group. I have been speaking to a lot of innovators this year, and I really hope maybe this is the group, right? We all know of Money Point. There was already POS machine before Money Point came to Nigeria. So you need to ask yourself, what distinguished Money Point from the other POS machines? They're only solving for one feature. And how did they solve it? They went to meet their customers. So we also don't want you to solve for solutions just inside Semicolon's office. We hope that even our product launch for the big bands, they go and sit with their customers at Balogun Market and see, right? You want to see how your solution fits into the life of your customer. You are not building a solution that the customer will only use and there's no day in the life of that customer, right? So we hope there's a session where you go into the market and sit with a potential customer and speak with them. If you think about the Nigerian ecosystem, there are thousands of problems. Please don't try to solve for all of them. Try to solve for one, pick one good one. There are a lot of issues on that end. And I think I just spoke to him that said something has to do with blockchain. So try to solve for one issue at a time. And if you solve for one issue, you can scale and then diversify, right? So pick only one issue and solve for it. And I really hope the next...
Gingered? Are we gingered? Please, I want you guys to give Efina 3 solid buzzer. Then after then, we're going to give them a shout of Sui. Are we good? 1, 2, ready, go! Thank you guys. Thank you guys. So I want to believe that we have been motivated, we have been impacted, and going to the hackathon, going to the Hackfest, we are ready to go with a lot of knowledge of what are the problems to figure out. All right. So thank you very much. So we have had a lot of keynotes, and also for the final for the day, I'm going to bring in another expert to deep dive, to go down into. So what we're trying to do, we're opening the ground. So at the point where we leave you, not like leave you finally, like at the point where we share you guys into your various teams, you guys are good to go, right? You're good to go with knowledge of what to do. I keep on saying that. So all right, please help me make and welcome Ashley Emmanuel. Ashley Emmanuel is the co-founder of Semicolon and also the CEO of Semicolon. Thank you.
For a little while, so I want us to do a quick stretch. Please, so stand up, as we say in Lagos. So I want us to please roll your shoulders backward. I'm coming around policing. I want to see everybody. The ones hiding in the corner, I'll see you. Okay, roll them forward. Even Will is doing it. You can do it. Olua told me. Oh, yeah. Okay, so now okay, this guy's into it. Let's clap for him. He's doing it. Do it the other way around. Who else can do the other way? One forward and one back. Ceiling, thank you. Okay. Can you feel it? Okay, switch other hand in front. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Just because you're engineers doesn't mean that we can't also be using this trick. Okay. So shake it out. You can sit down again. And remember, we're really important. Take little breaks. Eye breaks, and then we also need to take these physical breaks for our body. If you feel tired, go up and down the stairs a few times. Among other things, evidence shows your brain works much better when you're exercising and when you're sleeping. But engineers don't like to sleep. It's a good intersection of the two things that I work in, semicolon. So what does semicolon do? This is the building. We have a couple locations, but this is the building where we train software engineers. So our goal is to produce as many very high quality software engineers as possible. Because you saw the banks, the fintech startups, companies like Stack. 10 years ago, I was in our cynical and CEO and I were in the Bay Area in the US. We were talking to Shola, one of the co-founders. He said his primary challenge was lack of access to talent, tech talent. So we are trying to provide that talent locally. In this, so I said we train software engineers here. We have a 1-year intensive program. At the end, we guarantee jobs. We have some of our semicolon people here who will, of course, make us proud, right? All right. But we also provide services for companies, and we work with startups as well. So we do training and bench building, which means you just kind of help with investment. All right. We already talked about this. I just Nigerian work. Give me another figure. Tony talked about this. Sorry? 80%. 76%. 60%. 52. Yes, you just saw this number. 52. Right? So I know we talked about it big figures, then one of them. So that might be the figure some of us are thinking about. But the point is, as Tony mentioned, any kind of retirement savings. Maybe 4 of us. Esther does pushing my staff. So very few of us have, right? But you still have a gap in terms of financial inclusion for you yourselves. Why do we care about something like retirement savings? There might be other ways. Maybe you think you're going to build the next rockstar company and you'll just live off that money when you're old. Protection. But what is the other benefit of having a lot of people in a country use own pension accounts that have money in them? How else does that benefit the country? Does anybody know? Infrastructure and building the economy. Does that make sense? So every single person here had a pension account. Let's say you've been working for a few years. Every month money is going in. Your money goes in, your employer puts money in. And let's say each of you has 1 million naira inside your pension account by pension funds. And that's the money that gets used to build bridges and roads. That's the money that gets used to invest in businesses in the economy. So these are the various reasons why I care about financial inclusion. Now the challenge is when we work with innovators, you love to learn about new tools and technology, right? We all do. It's fun. The mistake that often gets made is that have you told them the judging criteria yet? Okay, so you've seen the criteria for the judging, right? So can anybody tell me what are the things they're scoring you on? Yes. Okay, use of Sui, the technology, but what else? Sorry? Functionality. Okay, does it work? Does it typically work?
Good UX.
Good UX. financial inclusion. So this has to work. So that's what I'm going to. I'm going to talk a little bit more. Joma just gave you the link. They look at the data. They realize insurance. Use of insurance is very, very low. Can anybody guess what percentage of Nigerian adults have any kind of insurance? 5 is good. And some of those just have motor vehicle insurance. Don't even know. So they see this data, they say, wow, there's a huge market opportunity, which is correct. They say, okay, we're going to innovate. We're going to partner with the telcos because who has more data about Nigerians than anybody except God? It's pretty much the big techs and the telcos, right? And then they're going to use some new technology, data analytics. They're going to use AI to come up with a solution. Does this sound like a good idea? Not bad, right? They spend 18 months. Every day they come to their office, they're building their product, and then they launch it into the market. What happens? They launch and almost nobody uses their solution. Why might this be? Beautiful, exactly. So they just sat in their own room and they built what they thought seemed like a good idea. But they did a lot of Nigerians, especially for insurance. They talk about trust issues. They realized there were some cultural factors. People just don't really like the idea of insurance. They're religious factors. When you're selling insurance, you're competing with the blood of Jesus, right? They realize that the user experience is not that good. People struggle to even adopt the product. So what should they do in? So this is an example of lack of what we call product market fit. So when we're looking at your solutions, obviously you're early stage, but we want to be designing with a plan for product market fit. We want to create a solution that people actually want to use and they're willing to pay for. We don't want to go really fast building, but in the wrong direction. So what the technique, I'm going to go through this kind of quickly because I know you want to get started. And when we take this approach, we start with those customers, those people, and what do they actually want. So let's give me an example. Let's say we're looking at financial inclusion, right? Give me an example of one challenge you face related to money. Any kind of challenge. Yes, please.
Having to receive money internationally.
Okay, good. Receiving money internationally, it takes a long time. Is that your challenge? Okay. Some people here are jealous that you're even getting international payments. Okay. So good. So that's technology. We can say, okay, their real estate fee is fast, right? So that enables us to do something. But we don't want to only build a fast solution. We would want to go and meet. What's your name?
Luke.
Okay. Don't meet a lot of Mr. Nature. So we want to go meet Luke and say, Luke, we deeply understand what he wants. What does he even mean? How is he defining fast? Right? What is he actually doing? Beyond that, what are his other pain points? What are his goals? Why does he even want to receive money fast? What's the use case, right? So we'll start with what he wants. But then we need to think about what can we build, what's possible, right? So Luke might say what he wants is to receive $1 million loan at 0 interest. Okay, we know what he wants, but is that something that we can deliver? Probably not, unless you figured out something I have not, right? So we have to think about what can we build, and then economically viable. That just means, does the money make sense? Is it a business that you're going to be able to charge for the services and generate revenue for what you're delivering? Enough revenue that it covers the costs for you to deliver that, right? And I was saying this is a big challenge in this market, that money piece. Because what's happening to us every week, we're dealing with a lot of inflation, we're all very squeezed, we have price volatility. But when your solutions are being scored and the judges are asking, is this scalable? They're going to be thinking about these three things. Scalable in terms of, do enough people want it, right? Scalable in terms of, can you build it will your solution
can you actually deliver the service to millions of users? And then very critically scalable in terms of the business will make sense, right? The money makes sense, and this can be this business maybe an investor will invest in and will allow you to build and grow. So I'm going to go a little fast here. So when we're doing design thinking, we start by just sitting with our team, defining the problem that we want to solve, and we can use this question: how might we? How might we help Nigerians receiving money from overseas do so more quickly, right? That's a very specific challenge. Maybe we look a little bit broader. So we say, how might we help Nigerians who are, let's say you're freelancing and that's why you receive money, right? How might we help Nigerian freelancers who are doing international work improve their financial well-being, something like that, right? So we can see how those questions are related, but the second one was a bit broader. It gives us more space to innovate.
There's no right answer. But you'll want to sit with your team and define what's the problem you're trying to solve, and using this problem statement is a good way to do that. You want to be clear on that, right? So we could say financial inclusion. But you want to have a good business, you want to make money. You could say, how might we capture underserved markets in Nigeria? Underserved can be those excluded people Tommy talked about. It can be the people like you who only have a bank account and don't have retirement savings and don't have insurance and don't have access to good loans. When we're design thinking, we start with really deep understanding before we even sit down and brainstorm. A lot of teams, when they're innovating, what do? The first thing you do is you sit down in a room and you say, let's brainstorm, right? But with design thinking, we want to do some other things first, and I'm going to walk us through that. So let's say the first thing the team does is some research. They're trying to really understand the problem. They go look at IFINA data, and then they see what Tommy pointed out, which is that women are a lot more financially excluded than men. So then now they say, actually, and they see that there's a lot of business opportunity because data shows that women tend to be better customers in terms of repaying loans, right? So it's a good business case. So they say, okay, we're going to change the focus of our problem statement a bit. This team says, how might we reach more women with financial services? Now they have a clear direction, but a lot of opportunity for innovation. They're doing their understanding. They read data. Whatever you're doing in financial inclusion, there's a lot of free, good quality research and tools that have been published already. So don't start from scratch. Go and use those. When you innovate in another topic, like health or education, same thing. Start from the foundation of knowledge that has already been produced, right? It's there, it's free. Then they conduct expert interviews. So they're learning, right? They go and talk to people like researchers, like professors. They talk to people who have led banks and microfinance banks. They talk to the CEO of MoneyPoint, etc., right? They analyze data. As Tommy mentioned, there's some public resources with data. I'll share the link after because I don't want to make this take too long. So they've done their research, and there are lots of other ways you can do research or understanding. But then they want to deeply understand and empathize with their customer. Empathy means you just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? You can't really build a product that is going to delight somebody if you don't have that full sense of empathy. So what are some of the ways we can do this, do you think? Let's say you're designing a solution for, I want to choose a group that maybe you don't have direct experience with. Let's say you're designing a solution for market women, right? And we'll assume nobody on your team has been a market woman previously. So how might that team really deeply understand and empathize with their target customers? Any ideas? There's no stupid suggestions. Throw out anything that comes to mind. Yes, please, Luke. Okay. Okay, doing a survey. Interviews, great.
Good, good, good. So having conversations with them, and it can take a survey format, it can take an interview format. Excellent. What else? What else can they do? Yes, please. Okay, say more about that. Good. Good. So they can observe them. There are some other ones, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move through them because what you've both mentioned is great, right? So one, this was closer to the second submission. You can shadow people, ask their permission, but you just follow them around. You're observing, and you're noticing what are all the pain points? What are the things that are difficult for them? How long does it take to do this, right? The fly on the wall observation that was mentioned, this is similar, but in this case, they just sit there very quietly. Like if there is a fly sitting on the wall, there is a fly on the wall. So, but that fly, until I pointed it out, you probably didn't notice it just sitting, right? But it's looking at you, it's observing everything. I don't know if flies can hear, but if they can, it's listening to everything. So a fly on the wall is being kind of like that. You're not disturbing anybody, you're just silently observing as much as possible. What are the dynamics in this market, right? Interviews, right, as Luke mentioned. So these, a lot of times we want to go to the location. If you want to interview market women, don't bring them here. You try to go to them because you learn a lot more, right? Very open-ended question. You can start with some questions you wrote down, but you're just trying to listen as much as possible. And you want to be surprised. That's when you learn. And there are lots of other things you can do. You can give them little cards that represent financial concepts and play games, many different things. But the point is that we want to be really engaging with, observing, empathizing with these people. Then we kind of put all that information together. There are tools you can actually use for this, but the team here is just thinking about, we did so much research, we observed so many things, we talked to so many people, you're starting to make sense of patterns, trends, insights, so you're setting the stage for coming up with solutions. One simple tool here is using this statement starter. You can say, we met, let's say FIDA, right? This is an example from a project done by IDEO.org, the nonprofit arm of one of the leading global design firms. They did a project called Women and Money in Nigeria, using a human-centric design approach. So you could say, okay, we met FIDA. We were surprised to notice that she doesn't even know where to go to access a bank account because there's none near her. We wonder if this means we can open access to banking services by providing alternate access points like agents in her community. It would be game-changing to explore putting more female agents into her community, something like that. You can do user journey mapping as well. You look at every stage. Okay, I shadowed this person. I noticed that her mother called her, this is Yemi, right? Her mother called her, needs money in the village. So she went to the ATM in the market. There's no cash, or the ATM is not working. And then she was looking at the banking hall, but the queue is very long. So what does she do? She goes to a POS agent. It's probably more expensive. She takes the cash to her sister who is traveling the next day, right? So we're mapping that user journey. In that journey, we see the pain points, we see the workarounds, do we see opportunities for improving that journey for her? We do, right? So these are ways that we're just starting to really think through the situation. Tomi spoke about personas, and she gave a really good example. I will say for financial inclusion, there are Tomi showed you one. It was specific to women in Kaduna State, but it was an example. There's also some personas that were done for just Nigerians generally. It's called the human account. This work was already done, so you don't have to redo it. I suggest go use this free resource, and you can tap into those personas so that you can think more deeply about building, if you're building a customer-facing solution. Some of you might be building infrastructure solutions, but if it's customer-facing.
Next, we come up with ideas. Many of us brainstorm, so I'm not going to talk about that. I want to show you a few methods that you might not have thought about before. So one is called alternative worlds. This is where the team is looking at different industries to draw inspiration. I'll give some examples. Has anyone here given birth? No, not yet, right? Okay, I don't know about you. Me, I have 2 children. I've done it twice. So when you go to give birth, and we're talking about health inclusion. We want women to be able to give birth in a context of good quality medical care, right? It doesn't have to be in a hospital, but oftentimes that will be in a hospital. You spend a few days there. You're in labor. After you have the baby, they still need to monitor you, support you, right? Does this look like 3 days and 2 or 3 nights sitting with, and then you're with your baby and family? No, it's not that comfortable, right? It's okay. It's not terrible, but it's not a place that any of us decides to go on holiday. So, experience of childbirth are going to have to be a bit different. But the team went to hotels, they immersed. That's something that we can do in hospitals. The lighting, what's the first thing they ask? Do I have to take injection, right? So a team is looking at how can we know that some drugs still need to be injected for now. You can't switch it to a pill. How can we make this process, how might we make the process of taking injections less unpleasant? And so they looked at something for inspiration. This is a trickier question, but can anybody guess? If they're trying to make this injection less painful, less unpleasant, what might they look at? Sorry? Vein? Oh, a vein viewer. Okay, so that's a good idea for a solution, right? But it's not so much an alternative world, so it's not this exact method, but it's something that very likely could have helped them, which I've seen somebody use recently, right? Good. Any other guesses? Yes, please. Okay, they could look at a spa, which is a very good idea. In this case, and that might be part of the solution, right? Putting somebody in a relaxed environment so they're not so tense, because when you're tense, it's more painful. In this case, the team looked at mosquitoes. Because why? How many people have been bitten by a mosquito in the past month? Probably all of us. I don't know, the ones inside Legos at least. So a mosquito, it lands on you, it bites you, it flies away, you never even knew. So the scientists took microscopes and they looked at this process of how does this mosquito inject its proboscis, or whatever it's called, into you. And that helped them design a new shape of a needle that was maybe still a bit painful, but less so, right? Okay, great. So I'm going to skip over this. So there are lots of other tools and methods we can use at ideation phase. I'm going to leave you with some links, so if you want to go deeper into those, you can. And then the last concept I'm going to share is prototyping, right? So a prototype means you're creating something before you spend all of that money and time and effort to build your final product. Remember what our team did? It was difficult to use, that people didn't want it, right? So what does that mean? They've probably used up all their budget. They've wasted a lot of time. One way to avoid this problem is by prototyping. For you, a lot of times you'll use wireframe diagrams, right? If you're in the tech space, but you can have a storyboard as well, a very early prototype. The customer, the first step, it's almost like drawing a comic book. You draw the first picture. The customer, the agent meets the market woman and talks to her about account, is box 1. Box 2, the market woman feels like opens a link on her phone, right? Step 3, she fills out the form on her phone, etc. That's an example of a storyboard. So there are many types of prototypes we can use. Oftentimes we start with what we call low resolution prototypes, really quick and dirty. It might take 10 minutes. And you'll do this in like a hackathon setting. You'll probably be doing those quick ones, right? And then later on, you can move to higher resolution prototypes as you get closer to the solution. And then when
one of the reasons we create a prototype is because we want to test it with actual users. So if you created a solution for market women, what are you going to do? You're going to have maybe your storyboard, right? You might have like an explainer, demo video that makes it look like the solution exists, but it doesn't exist yet, right? You might have role play. You might have some screens to show the customer, and you explain the journey. And what do you do with that? You're going to go to Sabo Market, which is behind the building. I'm not saying you have to, right? But you could. You go to Sabo Market, and you put it in front of some multiple different market women, and you don't sell their prototype, right? You don't explain your prototype more than you have to. You see how she engages with it, and you take her feedback. And there are some simple tools like you can just divide your paper into 4, and on this side you write down what do they like, people who interacted with it. What are the things they like? What are the things they don't like, they wish would change? Are there any questions or ideas that came up as we were doing this? I'm going to do, let me give this example. I'm going to give one example as I wrap up. So in the US, even in the United States, people are trying to get, there's like generally we want to encourage more savings, right? So a bank was looking at how might we encourage bank customers to save more. It's good for the customers, but the bank also wants it because why? They want more deposits, more money, right? So they engaged IDEO.org, or no, IDEO, who came up, they observed customers, bank customers. They did interviews, they shadowed them, they observed them. When they came up with an initial idea, they did a sample demo video and put it in front of customers to see their reaction. What was the solution they came up with? They noticed, this was maybe 20 years ago in the US, and people would use cash to pay for some things, especially small items. You go to buy a sandwich at lunchtime. Maybe the sandwich costs $4.92. They take out a $5 bill, they give it to the cashier. The cashier gives them 8 cents in change. What do? They drop the change in a tip jar, right? Or they put the change in their pocket, and when they come home, they have a jar near their door, and they drop the change into the jar. And after the jar becomes full, then they take it to the bank every few months, right? They noticed that people tended to kind of round. What the bank of the card debiting you $4.92, it debits you $5.92, it debits you $5. The $4.92 goes to the merchant. The 8 cents goes into your savings account. So customers are saving without noticing it, right? And they built a financial product that was them. Yes, actually, I do one. All right, thank you. All right, thank you very much. I'll end there. Actually, maybe take, if we have.
Thank you for sharing. So my question is, why we're trying to build a solution on...
Can you say a little bit more about, I mean, the answer is probably yes, but can you say a little bit more about the question?
Okay, let's say I'm targeting non-financial or non-tech savvy people. And I want to build more like trying to make their experience less tech cumbersome, less tech hectic, but also being able to...
...is that part of your solution, part of what you're doing is incorporates existing solutions, right? And your innovation is just adding a component to it. Is that, and you're asking if that's okay? Is that, okay, what do we think about that? It's a good question. What do we think the answer is to his question? Is that okay? What do we think the answer is to his question? Is that okay? Yes, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, obviously, if you're using an existing solution, you have to pay for it or respect the intellectual property or whatever. But we assume you do that. It's every innovation, pretty much no innovation is building every single component from scratch. The value in innovation is really, I mean, the question would be, has new value been created, especially for those customers or those stakeholders? So if you take existing software and you create
some innovative new hardware, or even you take existing hardware, but you package it together, you create a solution that's never been done before. And maybe the way you're pricing it and putting it into the market and communicating is new. That too is innovation. And as long as people are getting value for it, and they're willing to pay for it, and you're able to sustain your business, you're hitting all of those 3 circles, right? Then you're fine. You're fine. That's most, if you think about it, most innovation that you actually see has been built like that. We're always building on the shoulders of others who convening sometimes in communities like this, because these are all the people who are going to be building the other solutions that you two are going to be building on over the course of your career. Very good question. Any other questions? Yes, please. Do we still have the microphone?
Okay, I have 2 questions. The first one is, while carrying out a design thinking approach, how do you properly address a problem, like creating a prototype for a problem that doesn't have a proper environment that you can test it? I'm trying to think of a software solution I can use as an example, but I can't really think of, but it's most example. The only way he could test his rocket was by him launching it, and he said he lost a lot of money while doing that. So what is the safest approach in that kind of situation? Then secondly, how can somebody reduce barriers? Like, for example, if you want to go and take a part of the country I come from, one of the major barriers is language. Yeah. Language. So how can somebody like properly...
Okay, good question. Type the fuel cell. They might have just prototyped the fuel cell. They might have just prototyped the navigation controls or the panel, right? All of that. So there was, or the panel, right? All of that. So there were probably at least 100 prototypes of different forms that were done. But because of, I don't know enough about rocket science to know why that is the case, but we seem to see that sometimes with rockets, right? So they do kind of iterate and take learning with every launch as well. But definitely, and that's really true with products as well, right? You prototype, you put it in front of users, but you still don't have it 100% right before you launch in the market. So has anybody heard of lean? Just remind me, I'll share all of these links. You don't have to research it now, but later you can take a look. You don't have to read the whole book. There's a 20-minute continue to iterate or improve on that product. So you want to pay very close attention. Okay, I've launched my, let's say my mobile money. They're trying to do a lot 2.0, and they invited me to be a guest speaker for their leadership on that. After that, they encouraged me to experience with some other banks, but I still encountered some issues for sure, right? So although a lot has been in the market and it's functioning, they're still going to have to take customer feedback, look at data, interview me maybe about my experience and keep improving. Oh, okay. In terms of the engagement with customers. And I think you gave the example of language, but it could be cultural, it could be access. Is that right? Yeah, it's a good question. So we will want to be deliberate in the process in thinking about how we're going to engage, being mindful of that. So for example, I know some teams, how many people came from outside Lagos for this, right? So let's say you wanted to innovate and you have enough time, you can go borrow somebody, right? You can find a friend, you can hire a translator, but it's if you can maybe encourage another innovator from a team to come and help you, right? You will want to be deliberate even in who you send out. So let's say, Tommy was talking about financial services for women in the North. Maybe if you're interviewing women, they'll be more comfortable talking to a woman than a man. So you'll think about who on our team are we going to send to go. Just me, looking at me distracts people. You're asking them about bank accounts. So we do want to be deliberate, but usually there are creative ways. Even if you don't have the direct access in the team, always feel free to ask for help. What I would advise you
to do is try to get a network of supporters and advisors. So there are so many people. I've invited a few friends, like colleagues and friends, to be judges tomorrow, who have like good as they want to support new innovators in the ecosystem. There are a lot of people, if you ask them, can you take an hour to answer some questions about this? I'm trying to build a new inclusive financial solution. People will be generous with their time. So sometimes if you don't have access to a place, and this can be for research, bank, right? Bank executives, and you don't have access to those people in your network. If you have a few advisors that have been giving you input about the solution, and those people have the networks, usually they're very happy to help you and connect you. So, I mean, I can talk about it more if I didn't fully cover your question, but that's what's coming to mind first. We can talk offline more, because I'm mindful of time. Can I take one last? Okay, one last.
Okay, so if for building solutions, we consider government policies. So I know of a scenario, Gokada in Lagos, and then when motorcycles were banned, they were taken out of business. So building your solutions, first of all, it is a two-way thing. Even if you're a registered business and then you're paying taxes, then a new government comes and then your particular means of your revenue model is suddenly taken out of market, right? How do you look out for those? And then if you're also taking someone out of business for every solution you're bringing, certainly.
Okay, go on.
You're taking someone out of business.
Is there a question related to that, or is this statement?
Yes.
Okay, what's the question?
So, how do you, like, because they are going to be part of the experts you're going to be interviewing, because they have some related information in the field. How do you handle that, taking them out of business, and then if you, by chance, go down some other day?
Okay, so I'm going to give you like the quick answers. Happy to talk more about this, because some of these are questions that would be more at the stage of launching the business. I'll start with the second one first, because I remember it. First of all, not every innovation takes somebody out of business. And this is actually important. There is what we call market creating innovation, and that's actually what we need more of. When the iPhone was first created, it didn't take anybody out of business. It may have, maybe it made some of the feature phones less relevant, right? So people were moving to this, but it created, before the iPhone, you couldn't create a business that ran via apps. And now you can, right? So it actually created a lot more market opportunity. But I think I understand your point is that there are competitors and you're engaging with competitors. And the short answer is, first of all, like I know somebody who was a staff of a fintech, built his side business. He was building a side business competing with that fintech. He's not my friend. I found out about it for some other reasons. And because our CEO knows the owner of the fintech, he informed the owner, right? Because it's, of course, against both ethics and company policy. And the owner of the fintech said what we expected him to say, which is like, thank you for informing me. He should know that his staff are doing something unethical. But he's not worried about that new business that guy is creating, because he's not going to be able to do it, number one. But number two, the market is really big and underserved. And what did Tomi show us with the data? There is so much non-consumption in financial services. 3% of Nigerian adults are insured. If you want to do an insurance product and you go meet an insurance company, your solution doesn't have to be competing with that tiny sliver of the market they're serving. You probably want to come up with a solution for the 97% of people who are not being served. When we created Semicolon and we started training software engineers, we actually wanted other people to copy our model, and I still do today. And I'm trying to work with government and industry to create a stronger enabling environment so there can be more programs like Semicolon, because there's such a big need. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but there are ways you can be polite and diplomatic, and I can help you with that if you need it. Sorry, your first question. You had another question. Sorry? Oh, government, thank you. We've seen things like swift changes in regulation around cryptocurrency solutions, for example, right? So ability is actually, not only can you build the technology, but is it legal? Is it permitted by regulation? And is it likely to be permitted? Or two, your point around changes in regulation, something like banning Okada, something like banning Twitter, something like changes in crypto regulations we're operating in. How do you manage that? One of the ways is risk analysis. So if you're now building your solution, there are tools, number of regular news and engagement. You want to be listening to all the departments that are involved in regulating you, listening to his speeches. And those are the things that if you go through that access, but definitely you would pay attention to, or others if you need any support. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm back. We should do 5 or 20. Go by. No. This is not. Ready launch for you guys to do. Ready? Are you ready? All right. Perfect. All right. Wheel down to understand how to tailor our ideas to get a wonderful prototype to be out. All right, so we're going to have a 30-minute networking session. Please, if I can go back to a minute. I'm on a minute. Participant, don't overeat. Make sure it's on the go. Fix your eyes, fix your gaze there, right? On the go. Fix your eyes, fix your gaze there, right? So while you're eating, while you're talking with fellow, don't say you're not my team member, I won't talk to you. So while you're eating, while you're talking with fellow, don't say you're not my team member, I won't talk to you. No. Connect. Come on. Hope you can beat me, right? Hope you're gonna win. Hope you can compete with me, right? And also the Hackfest guidelines, there are a lot of things that you cannot do. That was mailed to you guys. You being rude, you being violent, you talking down, you being rude, you being violent, you talking down on your any team, it's totally not allowed. So during this networking session, defaulting in that on your any team, it's totally not allowed. So during this networking session, defaulting in that would lead to automatic disqualification from the Hackfest. So and I don't. Can you guys give him